I mean, this was ghetto. It was, people were dying out of hunger on the street and bearing and them. It was horrible.
They started out to all the Jews to separate them out from the Gentiles, to what we called a ghetto at that time. So where we lived, we had to leave the place where we lived to move some other places where they could put like a, you would call it a circle around the area where they could get a hold of us anytime they wanted to. In other words, we were not mixed with different people or with the Gentiles that lived in town, because if they want to pinpoint or take a group of us, they could come into any building or any house and take the whole group. The gentleman requested that all the Jews had to deliver their valuables or the things that were important to the war, like silver, copper, many other things, especially entertainment things like radios and any other cameras or anything we have in possession, we had to deliver that. If we didn't and we were caught with them, they would shoot you. And at the time we were thinking when they were talking about shooting somebody, we were talking about, don't worry about it, he's not going to shoot you just because you have. But they did. So everybody was afraid, and they went and delivered whatever they had.
We had, I forgot the time, we had a very short time to move over to this ghetto. So what do you take? You couldn't take any furniture. What you took, you had linens. You put pillows in the linens, dishes. And I wish I could show you a picture like a little girl, about 5 years old, was carrying a linen. Everybody was carrying something. You make another trip, another trip. While this was going on, the Polish people and the Ukrainians, we were still in our apartment. They were fighting over our furniture. Who's going to take the furniture? You can laugh, that's how it happened. We were sitting, my father looked at me and laughing. They're fighting on our furniture. One guy says, I was here first. Mr. Nussbaum, wasn't I here first? My father said, he didn't answer, he just laughs, you know.
In 1941, I was going out, it was a separation from the Jewish people to the Gentile people. It was fenced up with a wall, I don't remember how tall it was, but I don't know, 8 or 10 feet, very high, in Poland, Warsaw. And plus the wall high, it was barbed wire on the top. Plus this was glass. In case you want to climb over, you would have cut yourself to pieces.
Everything that was done through the Jewish Council. So if they needed 300 people to remove snow, I remember the first winter, if they had to shovel snow off the roads so they could run their transports back and forth. They came to the city council and we need 300 people, and the city council had to decide what able-bodied people they had.
They told them, tomorrow they're coming in, they want to kill out 3,000 of them. They have to bring them in. The government, so what are they going to do to the government? The police picked up anybody that got a hold of them and brought them in. What do they do with them later? They killed them out too, the government.
my brother-in-law was asked to join police in the ghetto, Jewish police in the ghetto. And they promised him, if you are going to join those, you'll be able to save your family. So he tried to join them. But when he seen what he had to do to catch people and transporting them to camps, he just, after 2 days, resigned from his work. And he was transported right away to gas camp.
One time I had a pound of butter and taking it to the ghetto, and they caught me. Either somebody snitched on me or they were just looking for us. And I got 25, I mean with a leather whip on my bare ass. And I said, I am not going to cry. I am not going to give them satisfaction that they hurt me. And next day I said, well, everybody was kidding me. Can you sit? Can you sit? I said, well, for $1, I'll sit down. But that was one of my worst experience to get. It was Jewish police doing it, and Germans standing there. And the less I because I didn't cry, the more they were beating on me. Anyway, that was it.
In the ghetto, we had about 2,000 families in 10 houses. You know, in a store, there are few stores over in the new area. We could have, in every corner was a family. Didn't have no room in the corners. Someone went right in the middle. A family moved in right in the middle. They didn't have nothing, just because we were sharing with each other and so and so. And that's how we moved into the ghetto. Whoever was caught after the date, they just shot him.
We moved to one little room that only 2 beds could be, standing there. Let's say 1 bed and one was a couch, actually. And we had a little table and a little bitty, very lucky that we had a little stove, a tiny stove, I think, with 2, that you could cook on 2 platters, yeah.
We have to move out from our place wherever we lived to ghetto. That was 2 rooms. And we were able to take part of our furniture with us. It was kind of nice from beginning, but when the people were coming in and going from our place, some of them, they were killed, some of them, they were transporting directly to gas chamber. Different people were coming in and out of my house.
Sometimes we bought a 5 decagram, which is like, I don't know, very little, maybe 2 spoons of flour, and cook it with salt and water.
What I did sometimes when I was in ghetto, sometimes I took the plastic. I need to survive. I needed more food than average. Then let's say I needed enough food like normal person, but I never had it. So what I did with those plastic, I put it around my body and took out of this working place, went where I used to live and sold this, and this lady, she gave me some money for, not money, food. So I took to Ghetto. I didn't look like Jewish person. I was always blonde and taller than average Jewish person, and they didn't recognize me. and I am Jewish, therefore I smuggle things out of the ghetto and in of the ghetto. I went someplace and out of the ghetto and bought provision, like eggs on black market. In the store, I bought it. And went to ghetto and sold on black market because that's the only way we could survive. I was there maybe 17 years old. And how I went out, our place where we live, the basement window was going out of the ghetto. And of course, it took very small person to get through the window. So I was looking on the patrol because they were patrolling the streets. I was looking, I saw the policeman went one way, then I knew it will take him a few minutes to go back. So I sneak out on the ghetto, out of the ghetto and bought the provision and smuggle in, throw away to basement first, and I run in back, close up the window, and that's way I and my little sister had survived physically. We had more to eat, otherwise we would die because we were very young people and we needed we were growing. She was 14 from beginning and I was 16, so you could imagine her. By morning, probably I washed my face, splashed my face with water. We had running water in the kitchen, I remember. And of course, I don't remember how I washed my clothes or probably in cold water on the sink. That's all what I could do. And therefore, when I went to camp, I wanted to work in laundry to keep myself clean.
And myself, I was the breadbasket at home. My folks couldn't get any work because they were too old to work. They were 45 and 50, and at that time, they didn't want to take them to work. So I'm the one that had to go to work, which I did, and supported the family as much as I could. We were rationed at certain things like bread, meats, and other vegetables and stuff like that. We could only get so much, so we make do with whatever we had. But at the same time, I worked with some people that did let me go up to the farm and buy some stuff for some other things. And from there, I worked for the German, well, let me call it a company, a shoe company, where they paid me weekly a small amount of money. When I call a small amount, it's very small. But I worked there mainly to get the pieces of leather that were falling off what we would call a scraps over here. And I had some people that would come up to my house and buy the scraps from us because leather was not available. And they were making military shoes. So whenever you cut out soles, you had a corner. And I used to pick them up every night and take them home. They would let me do that.
When we went to Swavkov, I immediately felt responsible for my mother's well-being. By now, I was almost 13 years old and we had no resources. Since I was only 13, I was not asked to work on these forced labor battalions. But other people were, and it was still possible to substitute a person who didn't want to go. He would pay me to go for him. And that's how I was earning some money to help out. And I was substituting every single day on different battalions.
I didn't work because there was no work for young girls at that time in the ghetto. So it wasn't too much longer. My brother was 9 years old, and he went to work for the Germans. in a German hospital. And he was a very strong boy, and he's a very good worker. So they liked him very much. And they gave him some bread and some other groceries, so he brought home for us. One day, he comes home after quite a few weeks with a German in a uniform. So the neighbors were scared that they're going to take us out and they're going to shoot us too. So I said to him, of course, in my language, in Jewish, why did you come with him? He said, you're going to go to, he told that German likes him very much, and he told him that he has a sister, that she knows everything, which it wasn't true. Of course, he played on his sympathy. And she's beautiful, and she knows how to do this, and she knows how to do that. So he persuaded this German to come and take me out to the same place where he worked, because they knew over there that the same night is going to be an Aussiedlung, which means they're going to take people out and then close down the ghetto. So he took me to work over there, and the same night we were fenced in. From the fences, we saw hundreds and hundreds of people marching through. I saw my mother and I saw my two sisters. They were walking them to the trains, and they took him to Treblinka, which was a death camp. We didn't know in the beginning what they did with them, but they all went to the gas chamber.
Every day the Germans came, they picked me up and took me to work. I was working quite a while. I was looking through the bullets, which one is good and which one has a hole. I have to segregate them. And this was my job.
I was trying to seek a job because that was the security. Otherwise, if you didn't have a job or a working card, then you were the target to be sent away.
In the meanwhile, everyone had to have a job. You had to to survive, you had to work. You had to have a permit, that you are working someplace. Since our city, I want to point it out, was a very industrial city. We had our brushes and fur and leather. Our brushes were going all over the world, were shipped. So thanks to that, our hometown was surviving much longer than any others.
The movement was the biggest part. You couldn't move wherever you wanted to go. You had to wear a Star David or an armband, and you had to be recognized because even the people that lived on the other side of the ghetto, which I'm talking about the Gentile people, could come and harass you and do things, and we couldn't do anything about it. We were strictly there. Whatever the Germans wanted to do, we had to go along for what they wanted to do. And harassment was the biggest part, and there's nothing we could do about it. We just have to live with it. We couldn't go back to tell them, say, don't do that or do it, or don't, why do you do that to me? There was no questions, there was no answer. When he came up and he whipped you, or he pulled you, or he pushed you, you took it the best you could.
What the Nazis had a habit is to grab people in the street. They would come in and close off the street, and they would just grab able-bodied people, load them on trucks, and these people were never heard from again.
The situation, in the ghetto was very horrible. I remember it was on New Year's. They just came in the ghetto and just for fun, killing from right to left. Just went in, and killed everyone who was in sight. So you was always under that fear that maybe you will be next.
One night, we went to sleep. We lived in one room with 4 children. And one night we went to sleep. And 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on the door. And 2 Germans came in and told my father, get up. And he got up and he walked only to the doorstep. And they gave him 6 bullets in his mouth. And they left. He was laying right in front of the apartment. And they walked off about 10 feet. And they came back. They thought he's still alive. And they gave him another bullet. So the same night, right in the morning, my mother was a very beautiful brunette. The same morning, this is unbelievable because I didn't believe at the time. My mother was snow white, gray. And after this, it was a very hard time. My mother was laying on, this was in the winter. And my mother was laying evenings, night by night, and day, in picking up the blood with the snow and put it in bottles. What she wanted to do with this, I don't know, but she kept this blood in bottles for days and days in the house, in the apartment.
On March 5th, 1943, they make an announcement, the German make an announcement. Everybody who wants to go to Israel, and if they have to Palestine, if they have relatives, they should register, and we will see that they go. Well, my roommate said, you know what, I have a brother there, I am going to register. So she said, you should do too. I said, I don't have nobody in Palestine. She said, well, why don't you put my brother's name, say this is your cousin, we are cousins. So I says, okay. And on March 5th, we came back from work. There was my friend was not there. They all took them out, and several miles behind the city, they shoot them.
I was eyewitness to seeing people throwing children from second-story building right to the truck. The adults, they were beating up, and they had to walk on their own strength, on their own feet. And later on, they were transported to gas camp. But it was crucial to see the little children. Parents, they dressed them up nice. They thought maybe they are going to have pity, such a beautiful baby. And what I saw, they pick up the baby and throw away just right to the truck. And the blood was running all over the backyard where I was hiding, what I saw it. And then later on, quiet down everything. They did what they have to do, the German, and they left. So then we went out of the hiding place, and people start to clean up the blood, wash off with hoses. And there was this thing in the ghetto.
My husband, that time, he says, well, you not go. What you going to do? You going to live by yourself here? Come on, I am going to get somebody to see that we get married, some cantor, or because there was no rabbi, or some religious Jew, and that we get married. Pack your things. Well, I didn't know if I should pack the things or not pack the things. I didn't know if I want to or not. I hoped that he will not come back. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. But that's what he got somebody, and we had a party because he had a lot of wine and from that place where we worked and so on. And that's when we got married. 3 months later, we were sent to concentration camp.
But 1942 or late 41, they gathered all the Jews at a baseball, let me call it the baseball stadium. And from there, they put us in different kinds of buildings to go ahead and separate the younger from the old. And you could get a card. They have cards of 3 colors. They were pink, yellow, and blue. The pink card meant what we call now extermination. The yellow card meant you could be there for the time being. The blue card meant you had to go to work. So the place that I worked, the woman came and took me and my parents out of the area, and she had to go up to the next town to get the cards. When she got the cards she brought back yellow cards. They would not give him the blue cards because of my parents not being able to work. I did work, but they would not issue me a blue card because my parents got the yellow cards.
They used to take all the people, doesn't matter, babies, old people, whoever it was, start to load them on wagons and take them to the boxcars, just like kettles, almost, and push them in the boxcars and take them to a gas chamber. But they said that it was not a gas chamber, it's just the name was Lublin. Lublin called it Majdanek, or it was just like a gas chamber. They promised us they're going to take us to places to work, and we will be tailors and shoemakers and upholsterers and anything you want to say, they mentioned that, because everything was a lie.
The Nazis came in, they surrounded the whole town, and they drove all the Jewish residents who by then had been concentrated in a ghetto, in a small area, and they drove all the people to the city square. And once they rounded up all the people, they marched them to a local brewery, which was surrounded by a big brick wall. And inside that brewery, they had a Nazi officer who selected people. Of course, no one knew what he was doing, so he was selecting people to go left and right and left and right. And I was with my mother and younger brother, and they put us over to one side, all 3 of us. And for some reason, I had this piece of paper on me, and I showed him this piece of paper that I had worked for the Nazi mayor, and then he grabbed me and pushed me to the other side. And that was the last time that I saw my mother on that day, and my mother and my younger brother.